This week we're reading the Torah portion titled Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, which of course begins with Sarah's death. And as is all too often the case in our Torah narrative, we spend about 2 verses talking about Sarah before quickly we move on to talking about how it impacts Abraham. Abraham is, of course, in profound mourning, and he's grieving more than just the loss of his wife. At the end of last week's Torah portion, we read about the binding of Isaac, this moment where Abraham goes up on the mountain to sacrifice his son before he's told, no, just kidding, don't do it. And this is the last time that God speaks to Abraham directly. We see no record of Abraham speaking to Isaac again. They have no interaction until Isaac buries him at the end of this Torah portion. The way of life Abraham knows, everything that has made him who he is suddenly gone. The description that we get is that he is a resident alien living among the Hittites. We get this notion that he is in the community, but not of the community, which plays a pretty important role in what we're about to read, because he's found in this place where he has just enough autonomy and authority to be recognized, but not enough to be one of the crowd, not enough to be one of the community. And so we read from Genesis 23, and I should give you a spoon and we could do eye exams. Right eye, third line. Thereupon, Abraham bowed low to the people of the land, the Hittites, and he said to them, "If it is your wish that I remove my dead for burial, you must agree to intercede with me, with Ephron, son of Zohar. Let him sell me the cave of Machpelah that he owns, which is at the edge of his land. Let him sell it to me at the full price for a burial site in your midst." Ephron was present among the Hittites. So Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, all who entered the gate of his town. Notice how explicit we are about who's listening to this. And he says, "No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead." And it got smaller. Then Abraham bowed low before the people of the land and spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, "If only you would hear me out. Let me pay the price of the land, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there." And Ephron replied to Abraham, saying to him, "My lord, do hear me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver, what is that between you and I? Go and bury your dead." Abraham accepted Ephron's terms. Abraham paid out to Ephron the money that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver at the going merchant's rate. Now there's a lot to be found in there. There's sort of 2 separate sentiments that we hear included. The first is this idea of Ephron saying, "No, don't worry about it. Just take the land you need. Do what you got to do. We're here for you." But there's also the legal side, that Abraham insists, no, please, I have to pay for the land. It's important to me. We hear both of these values, and we get different commentaries that help us to understand why is it so important that we use this language. Most specifically, why do we read that Ephron and Abraham are having this conversation in the presence of everybody? Rashi tells us, all who enter the gates of his town, this is in reference to all of them, all the people, had left work to pay their respects to Sarah. This was a day at which the flag flew at half-staff. The whole community came out to pay respect. It's this beautiful sentiment of a community coming together to notice a person who is in their midst, who is struggling. And almost 900 years later, we read a different commentary, this time by Robert Alter, who says, in the hearing of the Hittites, all the assembled in the gates of his town, the same reference, but he says legal business was conducted in the gateway. Scholarship has abundantly observed that the actual language used by Ephron and Abraham in the narrator bristles with set terms familiar with other ancient Near Eastern documents for the conveyance of property. We get this twofold experience of transaction. The first is of kindness, and the second is for legal reasons. What Robert Alter points out is this notion of ancient Near Eastern documents. This is a way for the Torah to say, we have a claim to this land, and not only do we have a claim to this land, but we have two. The first is that God told us we could have it, which theoretically is good enough for us. But in case that's not good enough for you, we also have the receipt. We can see we paid for this land. If you don't believe it was good enough that God gave it to us, we bought it outright. And we need the legal documentation to say we followed the rules, we did it in public, and all of the Hittites can and should attest that we did this on the up and up. But we also see the human compassion side. We see that Ephron says, don't worry about it, I got this. And then he sees that this is important to Abraham. It's not a matter of money. This line that he uses, if we go back, here we go. What is 400 shekels between you and I? That idea that if we're going to quibble over this amount of money, just have it if that's what you need. Or just pay the price, whatever you want. I'm here to make this work for you as the one experiencing grief. We have this parallel between the legal and the human. In much the same way that we see reflected in our conversations about God. When we discuss God, we hear two different names predominantly through this section of our narrative. We hear Adonai and Elohim. Why would we have two names for God? Why would we go back and forth using these different languages? Well, first of all, there's an argument to be made for not the whole Torah was written in the same hand by the same single voice. But our rabbis and our commentators don't always like that answer, so they came up with a really thoughtful one. And that is that Adonai is the side of God that is merciful. This is the side of God that looks upon human beings and sees us as flawed and says, we're worthy of love even though we are flawed. Elohim, meanwhile, is the part of God that pursues justice, that requires of us that we act with upright integrity, that we uphold legal doctrines, and that we uphold our best selves. Adonai, Elohim, mercy and justice. They're two sides of the same coin, two parts of what it means to be human and to be holy. If we are, in fact, created B'Tselem Elohim in the image of God, then we know that we ourselves are obligated to both be just and to be merciful, to see the human and to see the structure. In our congregation, we've had a recent experience in having this conversation. As part of our high holiday experience, we brought in Judge Heather Russell, a member of our community, to come and talk about her change court. This is a system of government in the judicial system that allows Judge Russell and others like her to look at a human being in front of her and to say, what made this person stand before me in this situation? What are the laws and the rules that may have been broken that can't be ignored? We can't pretend nothing happened and send them back onto the streets. But we have to see the underlying realities that lead a person to feel so impoverished that they feel the need to steal, to be so stuck in a bad cycle that they need to commit crimes in order to find any way out. Judge Russell showed us that compassion and justice are not anathema to one another. In fact, they can be friends, they can be partners in making our world better by allowing us to do justice with our eyes open to the people that stand before us, to see the humanity of those who we serve. We talk all the time in this country about all kinds of political issues. They're pretty popular right now. We talk about things like paid family leave. We talk about things like health insurance. All of these situations where we're trying to create a system that takes care of everyone with one law. And yet, each of these systems is supposed to see a human being at the center of that law. Now, we know all too well, if every insurance provider had a ushy-gushy heart, none of us would have any money. That's not how the system's supposed to work. That's not how it can work. But at the same time, when our system is so rigid and so structured that we see numbers and we see expenses and we see digits instead of human beings, it doesn't matter how good our system is. We've lost our ability to be human in taking care of humans. In this week's Torah portion, we get the unusual and beautiful gift of watching another community treat us with the kind of kindness we hope for. The Hittites as a whole come forward and they say, we see your pain and we're here with you for it. We're willing to play by the rules. We're willing to sell you a plot of land according to the legal structures of our system. But we're also willing to do it with kindness. We're able to see your need and we're here to rise up with you. And we're able to meet you wherever you are. You can have this land for free. It's not about the land. But at the end of the day, if it's a little bit about the land to you, that's okay too. We're here with you, and we will help you move forward. What does it look like for each of us to take that lesson beyond this scroll and beyond these walls and say to the people around us, we know there are rules. We know there are structures. And we're going to care about you through those rules, and sometimes even despite those rules. May we all know what it's like to be cared for that deeply, and may we all take that care and give it to others so that we all see the best in one another. Shabbat Shalom.